Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining me for Mindful Morning today. If you are a self identified control freak, then this episode is for you. I'm going to reveal the number one secret to control the control freak inside. But before I do, something very useful to know about this thing of control. We try and control situations when we feel responsible for preventing disaster from happening. Okay, we try and control situations when we feel responsible for preventing disaster from happening. And if you are a self-identified control freak, then you know it can be tricky sometimes to discern when is it necessary to step in to avoid disaster, and when is it inappropriate and actually very frustrating for the person on the other side. So if you're ever confused about this, you can ask yourself, if I step in, can I offer a effective, positive, permanent solution? Will stepping in offer an effective, positive, and permanent solution? And if the answer is no, then at that point it's time to stop and identify the fear that is creating this compulsive energy. Control and fear are always interconnected because it's the fear of disaster happening that creates the desire to act. So, for example, if you are in a situation at work where you're constantly trying to control all of the fires, ask yourself, is this an effective, positive, permanent solution? What are the consequences to the dynamics at work, your colleagues, to your own well being? What makes you fully responsible for preventing this disaster? Who might you be taking responsibility away from? And what are the costs? Now, if you've been following Mindful Morning for a while, then you know that I'm never going to advocate for trying to control anything that's created inside our own skin, meaning any thoughts or those fears that are creating that compulsive energy to try and control the situation. In past episodes, I talk about how when we try and control, fix, get rid of anything created inside our own skin, we actually end up in a tug of war with ourselves that is like adding gasoline to the fire. So it makes these feelings grow. It makes them even bigger and have even more control over our actions. So the number one secret is to gain back control over your physical self, meaning what you do with your mouth and your arms and your legs, by doing the counterintuitive thing and actually stepping out of that tug of war with yourself, learning to drop the rope, to be willing to allow all of these thoughts and these fears to this compulsive energy that shows up, be willing to allow yourself to have that. Let it move around inside of you. It can be helpful to remember that, this compulsive energy is valid, right? It's normal in the situation because you care about the person and you care about the circumstances. So it's normal that it's going to show up and you're going to have it. So the more willing you are, if you're truly willing to allow that compulsive energy to move around, you suck the power out of it to have any kind of control over your physical self. So at that point, when you've truly allowed yourself to have this stuff, that is the point when you need to have some new ground rules for yourself about what you're going to do and not do. So, for example, if you try and control people through offering advice when it's not wanted, then maybe you set some ground rules for yourself of not giving any more advice. If it's to take on other people's work, in the work situations, then looking for another solution that is going to meet that criteria of being effective, permanent, and positive. Now, that might mean allowing the other person to fail. Let me tell you why it meets that criteria. Experiential learning is the most effective, permanent, positive solution that we have in terms of change. When you give somebody enough room to fail, to make mistakes, to go through the consequences, that is the point when they're able to learn and become resilient. So to allow the person to fall flat on their face And then and only then are you allowed to step in. Not to tell them all the things they did wrong, to criticize them, or anything like that. You step in as a supportive, compassionate ally so that they feel safe enough in your presence, that the experience is not shameful for them, but that they are able to learn and to really grow with your support. If you can honestly say that you have given somebody the room to fall on their face and that you have then been there with them as a supportive, compassionate ally to help them go through the consequences and learn. If you can truly say that you've done that and the behavior just keeps happening over and over and over again, that is the point when it's time to let go and make a choice. This is the most difficult part of the whole thing, right? If you're in a work situation, letting go might mean letting go of them in that role. If it's a personal situation, it might mean that the relationship itself needs to change. If you're unwilling to change the situation and to let go, and you want things to stay as they are, then you really have no other effective, permanent, positive solution at that point than to accept the person the way they are for who they are today. Now, the only exception to this, like we were saying, sometimes it's important to step in and avoid disaster, is, of course, if the person is of potential harm to another person, or if the person is underage and they are of potential harm to themselves. That is a point where obviously it's time to step in. But if the person is an adult, fully capable of making their own decisions, and they're choosing to continue this behavior over and over, even if it's of harm to themselves, it's the most difficult thing in the world to do, but to allow them to make that choice. It will only be because they have gone through the consequences so many times that the pros no longer outweigh the cons, that they've decided to make a change and put in the work for themselves. It won't be because of you. So I'm going to put the cheat sheet for this episode in the Mindful Morning Toolbox. So if you really want to work on this control freak kind of thing, you can download the cheat sheet, print it out, keep it in your drawer at work or around the house so that you can easily access it if you want to work on these kind of situations. If you're not opted into the toolbox, what that is where I keep all of the actionable exercises, mindfulness exercises as well, the audio recordings, the cheat sheets, the actionable resources that help you take this from a concept and actually apply it. So it's absolutely free. You can opt in, just put in your name and your email address, and you'll get all of the actionable resources that go along with all the Mindful Morning episodes. If you liked this episode of Mindful Morning, I know I say it every time, but please, leave me a comment, write a review, share this with other people. You never know who might need to hear this on any day. So thank you for doing that, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Take care.